Hello, my name's Andrew, and today we're doing a first impressions review of the Vivo Barefoot Tracker FG. So this is a mid-weight boot from Vivo Barefoot, and it's a good one to pick if you need something for really challenging conditions, like if you're going backpacking, if you're going hiking somewhere with a ton of rocks, really loose, unstable type terrain, because it's got a good blend of like protection, but also still a decent amount of flexibility. But yeah, I've been really excited to make this review because if you look at one of the first Barefoot shoes I ever got, this is the Primus Trek. They don't make this anymore, it's now the FG, but it's almost the same shoe, just with a lower cut upper. But I really like the design, you know? I just like the kind of like classic brown and then rust red laces. It just fits in really nicely with nature, you know? And it's the kind of shoe that begs you to get it like muddy and disgusting. But yeah, the durability was really good, you know? Even though it has a glued sole, it has maybe a little bit of separation, but it's held up, and I've been using it for 7 years. So yeah, I was excited to finally get to try the higher version of this boot. So yeah, let's just take a look at the features. Up front, you've got a wide toe box. I think it does get a little bit more pointy here, which is one thing I don't like about this boot. We'll talk about some of the other options from Vivo Barefoot that have a little bit of a wider toe box if that's something you need. But in general, there is a lot of width up here. It's really just sort of the tip where it gets a little bit more tapered. But up top, you've got a full leather upper, and it is completely waterproof. You can see right there. And I took it out this morning, and it was a good day for it because it rained like crazy last night and the trails were just sloppy and disgusting, and it's going through puddles and deep mud and stuff like that. And the upper is really nice for that because it's not as soft or suede like as some of the other ones from Vivo Barefoot, so it sheds mud pretty well. And yeah, my feet stayed super dry. It's quite warm as well for colder weather. You can wear this for hotter weather because it's not fully insulated, but it does have a fair amount of material, especially around your ankle, to keep the cold out. So if we look at the ankle, it's got quite a bit of padding there. I actually really like this feel as opposed to some of the other Vivo Barefoot boots that I've tried that feel kind of like thin and hard, you know? Like they're trying to be lightweight, and I get that and I like that, but sometimes it's nice to have padding, you know? Like if you're going on a really long backpacking trip, you're carrying a heavy pack and you just want a little bit more, I don't know, cushion around your ankle. But yeah, on the inside of the boot, even though it is cushioned more here, if I can fold it open well enough. So when you get down into here, it is a little bit more minimal around your feet where you're more likely to sweat, where you wouldn't want something thicker. And then in terms of the back of the shoe, it's got multiple layers of reinforcement, which is great because the heel right here it tends to be where you get the most wear, especially if you're going on long backpacking trips. So it's got the heel strip, it's got the secondary reinforcement, then it's got the main upper material, and then it's got the wraparound sole. So a lot of protection on this boot. If you look at the top, it's got a few different sections of lace locks. So here you've got 4 different points where you can kind of adjust the tension, and these little grommets here hold really well. So if you're someone who has something that hurts on the top of your foot, or you just kind of like it looser in one place and tighter in another, you can do that. You can tighten it here, loosen it here, tighten it here, whatever you want to do. So that's that section. And then you've got an extra reinforced lace lock here, which is the most important part because this is where your foot's gonna bend. So you really don't want this tearing out, and there's gonna be a lot more pressure on this than any of the other eyelets. And you really don't feel it. I couldn't feel anything here, which is nice because it's still pretty light. It's not really heavy or bulky, which is great. And then at the top, you've got your top lace locks. So you can kind of just take the lace and slip it straight into there, so you can get the boot on and off really quickly, which is nice. If we look at, and one more thing about the upper, let me just take the laces out here so you can see, but it's also got a gusseted tongue, so that's really nice for waterproofing. You can really step into a very deep puddle before this boot is going to let any water in, which is great for just nasty conditions. Especially if it's cold, like if it's cold and icy, like you do not want a boot that's gonna let in water anywhere whatsoever. For example, the Magna series has a slip-in upper, which is really great, but water can come straight in through there. So yeah, Looking at the bottom of the shoe, it's got a 5.5 millimeter tread, which is kind of like middle of the road. Usually Barefoot shoes are anywhere from 3 to 10 millimeters. And this is the FG1 sole, their original firm ground sole. So it's got a medium amount of flexibility. You do have to apply a little bit of force to get it to bend all the way, but some good vertical flexibility and some decent diagonal flexibility as well. So I have gotten comments from people wishing that Vivo Barefoot's heavier styles were more flexible. And, you know, I mean, compared to something like the Primus Light, you know, it's no comparison. But then if you compare it to this, like these are the original pack boots that I had from Merrell that I used to backpack in, and look at this flexibility. Are you ready for this? There's nothing. There's no flexibility whatsoever. So if you compare that to the FG sole, it's like now suddenly this looks like the Primus Light in comparison, you know? So I think it's a really good compromise between something that's too light and that's not going to hold up the trails, and then something clunky like that. But taking a little closer look at the tread, you can see that in front it's a little bit more spaced out than the back, and that's so that when you're going uphill, your forefoot, the front of your foot, can grip into the ground, and then in the back the lugs are a little bit closer together so that if you are going down a hill and your heel is hitting first, you're not going to get jabbed by sharp rocks, which is really nice. Okay, so that's the Tracker FG, but let's take a look at some alternatives. So the closest option would be the Tracker Textile, which is basically the same boot, but it's vegan material instead of leather. So if that's important to you, this would be a good option. Also completely waterproof. It's got the same type of upper with, you know, a lot of really nice padding here, very soft feeling. It's not, you know, as flexible with the upper as some of Vivo Barefoot's lighter hiking boots, but if you're going on really rocky, unstable terrain, you might want something like this. One other major difference is that it's got the FG2 sole, so it's a little bit more spaced out. I find it's better for wet conditions, a little more so than the FG1 sole, which is a bit closer together. I find that this tends to trap mud a bit more than the FG2, and the FG2 also has, you can kind of see like the lugs are sort of have this like chopped off pyramid shape, and so I think it helps the mud kind of slip off of it. But like I said, they're a little bit more spaced out, both in the front and the back. So another benefit of that is that you get a little bit more ground feel with this sole than you do with the FG1. But I think that you also feel the lugs a little bit more. So it's kind of like pros and cons, you know. But both soles are really good. I think this is just a little bit better for soft ground, and the FG1 is a little bit better for hard ground. That would be the major differences. So another option would be the Tracker Decon. This is the JJF, John Florence, and this one is a little bit lighter. You can see that the upper is a lot more flexible. This is what I was talking about earlier though. I found that because there's less padding in here, there is a little bit more pressure on your ankles, but you can kind of compensate for that by wearing a couple layers of socks. And I also have some other tips for that in my tight ankles video, which you can find here. Up top, you've got a stretchy wool blend collar, which is great for temperature regulation, but I also really like this rib design because it gets the material off of your skin a little bit and creates more airflow, which is great because this is a lighter hiker. You're probably going to do faster mileage in this type of boot and use it for warmer conditions, so any extra breathability is always great. It's got a notch here, so again, just more flexibility than the other two trackers have to offer. Underneath, you've got the 7mm FG2 sole, just like the Tracker Textile, and again, it's definitely better for wet conditions, but you know, it can handle rocks and stuff like that too, just because the tread is pretty flat on the bottom. And finally, for one more alternative, the Softstar Switchback has the most flexible upper out of any of the boots we've looked at. It's completely leather all the way around. It's water resistant, but not waterproof, and probably most of the other boots would be better in really, really wet conditions. But it is insulated with merino wool, which is something kind of unique. And I like this because it's extremely warm, it's extremely breathable, and because it's not super thick, you can wear it up into the 60s and maybe even the 70s before it starts to get too hot, which is nice. So it's got a really nice temperature range. In terms of the toe box, this is the regular width, but they also make an extra wide version if you need a little bit more toe room. And then one more thing I like about this upper is the laces. You can see that they're very textured. They've got this kind of spiral design to them, and they're actually the same type of laces that are on the FG2. And so what I like about this is that it just gives them a little bit extra bite, because if you just have perfectly round laces, they don't hold very well. It's just nice when the laces will hold so you can have different tension in different locations. Underneath, you've got a 9.5mm sole, which is made up of a 6mm Vivo Mega Grip tread. In my opinion, this is the best tread ever made for a hiking shoe because it's extremely grippy. You can kind of see how my finger sticks to it, but then it's also incredibly flexible. Like, this is ridiculous for a 9.5mm sole to be able to do this. But you know, the Vibram is only 6mm, and then you've actually got this very soft mid layer, which is why it's so flexible, and this is 3mm. So you get a little tiny bit of padding. It's kind of a great boot for if you want like a beefier sole, but you don't want something that feels clunky, you want more flexibility. Taking a closer look at the tread pattern, I like this balance of triangles for a little bit wetter, slippier conditions. And then on the outside, you have these thicker lugs, which are great for harder rocks and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a great tread for multiple conditions. You can even trail run in this thing because it's so light and flexible, both in the upper and the sole. So I really like this. I think the only thing that's really not versatile for is super wet conditions or hotter temperatures, in which case the other boots that we took a look at would be a better option. But if you'd like to support the channel, you can use the code FULTY10 for 10% off Vivo Barefoot, or FULTY15 in the month of March in 2024 for 15% off. FYI, you can also browse and filter more products at my website, barefootwear.org, or watch my zero drop transition video to learn more about barefooting. Finally, if you have a question about the Vivo Barefoot Tracker FG or about barefoot shoes in general, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time. Peace.